Henry Trent stood under the soft glow of a street lamp, adjusting his suit jacket as he waited outside the closed luxury boutique. The darkened windows reflected the emptiness of the street, and he felt a growing impatience for his assistant, Joshua, who was running late. "Where is that guy?" Henry muttered, glancing at his phone. As he checked the street for Joshua's car, the sound of heavy footsteps approached. A white police officer walked toward him, his hand resting firmly on his belt. "Hey!" the officer barked sharply. Henry looked up, sensing the officer's suspicion as he sized him up from head to toe. "What are you doing here?" the officer demanded, his tone accusatory. "I'm just waiting for someone," Henry replied evenly, trying to maintain his composure. The officer's eyes narrowed. "Waiting at this time of night outside a closed shop?" "That's right. My ride is running late," Henry responded, irritation creeping into his voice. The officer stepped closer, his gaze hardened. "Doesn't look right to me. You sure you're not loitering? Maybe up to something else?" Henry felt a flicker of annoyance rise in his chest. "I'm not loitering. I'm just waiting." The officer smirked, a cold smile devoid of warmth. "Standing around in a suit, huh? Trying to make yourself look important?" The tension thickened as Henry met the officer's gaze. "I'm just waiting, officer. There's nothing else going on here." "Do you have any ID on you?" the officer asked, stepping closer. Henry's jaw tightened. "I don't need to show you my ID. I'm not doing anything wrong." The officer's expression darkened. "You don't get to decide that. When I ask for ID, you show it. Or is there something you're hiding?" Henry took a deep breath, frustration rising. "I've told you what I'm doing. That should be enough. There's no reason for this to go any further. I decide how far this goes, not you," the officer replied, his voice low and threatening. "And right now, you're giving me a lot of reasons to keep asking questions." Henry clenched his fists, fighting to keep his cool. "There's no need for this. I'm not a threat." The officer stepped even closer, his presence imposing. "Funny how you keep saying that, but I'm not convinced. In fact, I'm starting to think you don't belong here at all." "I have every right to be here," Henry said, frustration bubbling over. The officer smirked. "We'll see about that. I'm not going anywhere, and neither are you until I'm satisfied." Minutes dragged on as they stood locked in a silent battle. Henry could feel the officer's gaze boring into him, daring him to make a move. "Look, I've explained myself," Henry said, trying to defuse the situation. "I'm just waiting for someone." The officer's hand hovered near his belt. "I don't care what you've said. Something about you just doesn't sit right with me." "What doesn't sit right?" Henry asked, his voice steady yet sharp. "The fact that I'm standing here in a suit, or that you don't think I belong here?" The officer's eyes flashed with anger. "Watch your tone. I'm the one asking questions, not you." Henry felt the tension escalate. "You're questioning me for no reason. If I were doing something wrong, you would have figured it out by now." The officer's smirk vanished, replaced by a hardened glare. "Guys like you always think you're too smart to get caught. But you're not." "What do you mean, guys like you?" Henry shot back, his pulse quickening. "I know enough," the officer snapped. "You're just another punk who thinks he can talk his way out of trouble. I haven't done anything wrong," Henry retorted, his anger boiling. "You're the one trying to create trouble." The officer stepped closer, hand hovering over his cuffs. "You're real close to stepping over the line." "And what line is that?" Henry asked defiantly. "The line where I stop letting you bully me for standing on a public sidewalk," Henry replied, squaring his shoulders. The officer's grip tightened. "You think you're smart, huh? You think you can mouth off to me? I've got the authority here." Henry felt the heat of the moment. Authority doesn't give you the right to harass people for no reason. The officer leaned in closer, his voice low and threatening. "I don't need a reason. If I feel threatened, that's all that matters." Threatened? I'm standing here waiting for a ride, and you're the one threatening to arrest me," Henry exclaimed, incredulous. The officer's jaw clenched. "I'll decide how this works. You're done talking." Henry squared his shoulders. "I'm not done until you stop treating me like a criminal." Without warning, the officer grabbed for the cuffs. "That's it. You're under arrest." Henry's heart raced as he watched the officer's hand move toward him. "You can't do this. I haven't done anything wrong." The officer's face twisted with frustration. "You just crossed the line. Don't resist." Henry jerked his arm away. "I'm not resisting." The officer shoved Henry against the boutique window, causing glass to rattle. "I told you to stop resisting." Henry struggled to push the officer away, pain radiating through his body. "I'm not resisting. You're the one pushing this too far." Without another word, the officer swung his fist. The punch landed squarely on Henry's jaw, sending him reeling. Pain exploded across his face as he stumbled against the window. "You just had to push it," the officer muttered coldly. Henry gasped, his hand instinctively going to his face. The sharp sting of the blow left him dazed. "What is wrong with you?" he managed to say, struggling to steady himself. The officer's grip remained firm. "You should have thought twice before mouthing off to me." As Henry regained his balance, he realized the gravity of the situation. "Do you even know who I am?" The officer paused for a moment, then sneered. "Doesn't matter to me. You think a suit makes you special? My name is Henry Trent. I'm the mayor," Henry stated, his voice steadier now. The officer's eyes widened for a moment, a flicker of recognition crossing his face. "Yeah, right. Like I'm going to believe that. You can check my ID. You're making a mistake," Henry insisted, his heart racing. The officer shook his head. "I don't need to check anything. You're just another guy trying to pull a fast one." As the altercation escalated, a few passers-by began to stop and stare. Whispers spread among the onlookers. "Is that Henry Trent?" one woman murmured. Joshua finally arrived, skidding to a halt. "Henry! What's going on?" he shouted, his voice filled with concern. "Joshua, get help! This officer is assaulting me!" Henry called out, anger boiling beneath his composed exterior. The officer turned to Joshua, still gripping Henry tightly. "Stay out of this. This is a matter of law." Joshua stepped forward, disbelief etched on his face. "You're arresting the mayor for no reason? Let him go." "Who do you think you are?" the officer barked, his eyes narrowing. "I'm his assistant, and this is outrageous," Joshua replied, his tone firm. "You have no grounds for this arrest." Henry's heart pounded as the tension mounted. He could feel the crowd's eyes on him, their judgments hanging in the air. "This isn't right," he said, addressing the officer directly. The officer took a step back, glancing at the growing crowd. "You're making a big mistake by interfering," he warned Joshua. "You're the one making the mistake," Joshua shot back. "If you don't let him go right now, I'm calling for backup." Henry felt a surge of hope. The officer seemed momentarily uncertain, shifting his weight as he considered his options. "You think you can just threaten me?" The officer spat, his bravado returning. "I've dealt with people like you before." "People like me? What does that even mean?" Henry replied, his voice rising. "You're letting your prejudices dictate your actions." Murmurs rippled through the onlookers. Some whispered in disbelief, while others expressed their anger. "Let him go," shouted a voice from the back. "You can't treat the mayor like this." Henry could see a couple of faces in the crowd, people he recognized from the community. Their support fueled his determination. The officer's expression hardened as he took in the crowd. "I don't care who he is. He's not above the law." "You're abusing your power," Joshua retorted, stepping protectively in front of Henry. This isn't about the law, it's about your prejudice. Henry seized the moment, looking the officer directly in the eye. This isn't just about me. It's about how you treat people based on their appearance. The officer faltered for just a second, his grip loosening. Henry could see the internal struggle written across his face. Just let him go, a voice from the crowd urged. You're embarrassing yourself. Henry's heart raced as he saw doubt flicker in the officer's eyes. He pressed on. You don't want this to escalate. We can resolve this without further conflict. With a final glance at the crowd, the officer huffed, clearly frustrated. Fine. But this isn't over. He released Henry, stepping back with a scowl. Henry rubbed his arm where the officer had gripped him. I don't want it to be over. I want accountability. Joshua looked at Henry, relief flooding his expression. Are you okay? Yeah, I think so, Henry replied, still shaken. But this isn't just about me. It's about making sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. As the crowd dispersed, Henry pulled out his phone to call his office. We need to get a statement ready. The media will be all over this. Do you want to make a public statement? Joshua asked, concern in his voice. Absolutely. This needs to be addressed, Henry said firmly. Change is never comfortable, but it's necessary. At a community event, Henry invited residents to share their experiences with the police. One elderly woman stood up, her voice trembling. I was treated like a criminal just for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. She recounted, her eyes filled with tears. The room fell silent as her words resonated with everyone present. Henry stepped forward. Your story matters. This is why we need to advocate for change. As the movement gained traction, Henry found himself interviewed on local news. This isn't just about me, he explained to the reporter. It's about every individual who has faced discrimination. The coverage sparked conversations across the city, drawing support from various communities. Later that evening, Henry sat with Joshua, reviewing the day's events. Do you think we're making a real impact? He asked, uncertainty creeping into his voice. Absolutely, Joshua assured him. You've given people a platform to speak out. That's powerful. Meanwhile, the officer began attending the community workshops, eager to learn. I realized I had a lot of misconceptions, he admitted during a session. I want to change how I interact with people. The facilitator nodded, encouraging his honesty. Acknowledgement is the first step. It takes courage to confront our biases. Henry arranged a meeting with community leaders and police representatives. Let's discuss how we can build trust moving forward, he suggested. A local leader responded. We need transparency in how officers are held accountable. It can't be just words. The meeting produced actionable items, including regular community police forums. Henry felt a sense of hope as everyone engaged in productive dialogue. We're all in this together, he reminded them. We can create a safer environment for everyone. Henry organized a rally to celebrate progress and unity. This is our chance to stand together, he announced to the crowd. To show that we believe in change. The energy was electric as supporters waved signs and chanted for justice and reform. The rally attracted media attention, and Henry spoke passionately about the need for reform. Our city can be a model for how communities and law enforcement can work together. The crowd cheered, their enthusiasm palpable as they united behind his vision. However, not everyone supported Henry's efforts. Some city officials voiced their concerns publicly. This is all a ploy for political gain, one council member claimed during a heated city council meeting. Henry maintained his composure, responding, This is about people's lives and their rights. If that's political, so be it.